business it will get the better job in the IT industry, and my videos will definitely help you to get the job in the functional side of the business analyst and technical side. So I'll try make you best and best for you. So let's start, guys, on working on this video. So let's first, introduce you what is the transaction monitoring system, what are the key objective of transaction monitoring system, and then we will discuss on anti-money laundering transaction monitoring process, how it works. Okay, so the transaction monitoring system, it is at the software it is a software-based solution which is used by the financial institutions and other financial organizations like bank or the non-banking financial institution to detect and prevent the financial crime in there the systems such as the money laundering, fraud, terrorist financing. Okay, to detect such kind of the suspicious activity in their organization, and the transaction monitoring system will help such institution to analyze the transaction data in real time or the near real time, or the batch processes to identify the suspicious pattern and behavior of the transaction of particular customers. So for that they fit rules or business logic in that system, and that will identify the pattern and the behavior of the transactions. So the key objective of the transaction monitoring system is to provide the scalable, robust and reliable platform for automate the risk detection management for the bank and the financial institution. So that's the important. But how the process will happen? So the transaction monitoring system will first detect the suspicious behavior of the customer from the transaction we are uploaded in the system, or the API transactions we provide the detail of each transaction to the system, and then we will do the settings of alert, and the customer identify the system which customer these this transaction, analyze the transaction, and then investigation and reporting will happen against this transaction. So there is a different unit, the operation unit and the compliance unit, and the compliance authority will that process will work in that way. So let's discuss on the high level architecture view of the transaction monitoring system, which we call the TSM. Okay, the the concept a layer architecture that move the data from source to insights to fields. So what are the reals? First layer is that I'll discuss all these things in detail in the upcoming slides. But first one layer is a data ingestion layer, then the data process and analytics layer, and then data engine layer, and the case management and the reporting will happen from the transaction monitoring system. So basically, the data ingestion layer is the layer where the collect and standardize from the data from the various sources like the core banking system, or the others card transaction system, or the leasing and borrowing system, the loan management system, or the international transaction monitoring system, where the data they will collect, and then they will do the data processing and analytics with using the different tools or itself contained in the transaction monitoring system. So they will filter the data, they will to process the data and perform the analytics data. Then the work is come to the detection engine layer. So the detection engine basically applies rules or logics that we are fitted in that system on that the transactions and applied at what are the suspicious, and to detect the red flags or to indicate the flag which the system identify that is the fraudulent transaction. And then further the operation team or the compliance team will do the analysis and apply the false positive or the true positive of that transaction, and then further escalate that transaction to the compliance team, and then the case management process will happen and reporting the layer will happen and manage the process to the outcome. So these step by step things will happen. So let's discuss each the architecture view in the detailed way. So first one, let's move on the next slide. So first one is a data ingestion process. So what is the purpose of data ingestion process for the financial institution. It will help us to bring the raw transaction related into the system from this separate sources. So the data sources are like the core banking system, like edge, wire transfer, or the where the core banking transaction data will the store. So that data they will collect. Then the card processors like credit, debit card data. So they are collected these card level transaction data from different system and to feed that data to the transaction monitoring system. And the online payment gateway, the transaction will happen through the in India UPI or the net banking, internet banking. So online payment gateway data and the customer data like KYC, customer due diligence data to check the word check, you know to sanction list or internal or external sanction leading to that thing. So these kind of the data sources where the data is collected and that data will feed to the transaction monitoring system. So that is the ingestion process. The technical component of the search process is a message. First one is a Kafka, Ruby MQ, APIs, and batch process. These are the the process high in the Kafka. The for the high throughout flood tolerant and real time stream will happen. In the Rabbit MQ is reliable message delivery and queuing system. Then the API. This when the real time will do. Then the API RESTful API. gRPC APIs from real time data submission to the source of system and do real time the transaction monitoring of this transaction and a further process and the batch processes. So script or the ETL extract transformation and load of jobs historical and non-real time data will happen. So the ETL process will run at the EOD. So ETL will pick up all incremental data or the full data as per the type or the data sources. So pick up these data and the extract these data and do the transformation of that data to apply some logics and that data and then further load this data to the transaction monitoring system for the EOD process. So this will happen under the batch processes system in the data ingestion process. So let's move on the next slide is a data process and analytics. So the purpose of the data process and analytics is to transfer the raw data in usable format and the perform the initial enrichment. So there is the data we are collected from the core banking system or the card system. So that is not the data has the format or has the data structure requirement for the transaction monitoring system. So the data processing and analytics system will convert these data to the data which is analyzed or understand by the transaction monitoring system, and this data is a meaningful data for the transaction monitoring system. So that process will do these things. So there the processes will happen. First one is a data validation. So system will ensure the data integrity and format correction is that format in the correct format, and then the data normalization will happen, the standardized field and consistent analysis will do, and then the data enrichment. So that is an important process, the augmenting transactions data and external information like a sanction list, customer scores. So that all things will added in that field and done. And then the in that process the technical components has this stream processing framework for the data lake warehouse and in-memory database. So basically, the stream processing framework is Apache Flink and Spring Streamline for the real-time event-based processing and aggregation will happen in that the data processing analytics and the data lake and warehouse. You should have the understand the technology of Hadoop, SDFC, AWS S3, Snowflakes. You should understand to store the vast amount of raw data and process the data for the historical analysis. So the transaction data are huge and huge data. Millions and trillion customer will do the transaction. So you should able to apply the parallel technique for the filter technique to the database and to extract the data for the data lakes and warehouse technique. And then the in-memory database. So reduce the arrow spike for fast lookup and real-time state management will happen in the data processing and analytics. So let's move on the next slide. that is a data detection engine. So finally, the purpose of data detection engine is a very important, and where actually the transaction monitoring system will work to the purpose of this thing is the core of the system. It is the core of the system and is identify the potential financial crimes. Actually, the system will analyze each transactions and detect the red flag for the fraudulent transaction. So the components of the data injection engine is the rule engine, machine learning model, and alert generation system. So rule engine is a set of predefined confidence rule. We define the some rules to the system. So according to word check or the flag any transaction over 10,000 or to the flag high risks of the countries, search of the transaction or the number of transaction done in the such some amount, so that will do the alert. So on the basis of rule we define in the system, so system will generate the rule red alerts of such transaction. So technology like probes, OpenL, tablet or custom built engines. So these are the technology we build for the rule engine, and that will detect the rules. Then the most important and the upcoming new banks or the financial institution heavily investment their funds on the machine learning or AI models to detect the suspicious transaction, like a supervised learning, unsupervised learning, deep learning, semi-supervised learning techniques are there. So that will use and to detect the suspicious transaction in the customer behavior. So the train and is on the historical fraud data to classify the new transaction had fraudulent or not. So train search models on the behavior of the customer, and the system will do the machine learning or the say, supervised learning will to detect that transaction is fraudulent or not. Then the supervised unsupervised learning technique will do identify the anomalies and cluster of the suspicious behavior without prior labels to that data. So that's the unsupervised learning. And then the alert generation will happen from that system in the data, uh, the integration engine. So where the rule or model is triggered, an alert is created and assigned to the risk score. So medium risk, high risk, or the low risk. So I'll already created video on that video. So if you want to understand, so please look this video, so that will help you. So on the basis of the rules that will happen. So let's move on the next slide, that is a case management and reporting. So it's an also the important part to provide an workflow for analysis to review the investigate and to act generate an alerts. That's the alert will generated by the acts. So that basically in bank, so accordingly the teams or the alerts that generated by the system or the history of the alerts, that alerts will assign to the operation team. And if that alert is related to the bank employee, then that alert will be happen the HR monitor for that alert. And if that alert had some past history, and that alert if bank wants to directly alert to the compliance team if is the high risky customer or the continuously alert will generated, so that alert will directly generated to the compliance team, so for the further investigation, and accordingly case will created. Okay, then the technical components of such alert is the case management system, reporting and visualization, and the communication and integration will happen. Or let's discuss on the case management system, or detect the platform to analyze or to view the alerts of that case, how the number of alerts that generated and why they are the red flag will happen. So all these thing system will display and see the transaction history and the notes, and the escalate the case for the further team, like the operation will escalate that team to the compliance team, like HR team will escalate that scale to the compliance team, and compliance team will identify it is a true positive, then they will escalate that to the financial intelligence units of that country or the central bank, or to do the suspicious things, or to do the further analysis, like the reporting and the visualization will happen. The dashboard and technology provide the real time and the history insights of alert volume, fraud, trade, and analytical performance will happen. The technology used like a Grafuna, Tableau, custom dashboard build, and with the 3D, 3 D3.gs technologies where they will use in such a cases. Then the communication and integration will happen through the APIs to integration with other system like core banking, blocking account for the blocking above accounts, and the regulatory reporting and the performance. If the system or the compliance team happen thoughts it's and the the fraudulent transaction, and we need to do immediate debit fraud debit freeze of these accounts. So then the integration will happen with the core banking system, and they do the immediate debit fraud of such transactions. So that's the fourth layer and important layer. So let's discuss on the technology stack summary. What are the technologies where interacting with each layer, and the system architecture person or the business analyst or the person who are working on the transaction monitoring system, so he should know these technologies. So the data ingestion process, we will use the Apache Kafka or Rabbit MQ technology. There we will use. Then the stream processing, we will use the Apache Flink and Apache Spark technology. We will use in the data storage, the data where the data will storage like a MongoDB, PostgreSQL for the structured data, and Redis for the caching, Microsoft SQL. So these are the databases. These are interact with the data storage or the SQL to patch the data, to collect the data, and the data lakes like Apache Hadoop, AWS S3, and the data detection engine like a customer rule engine, Python, TensorFlow, PyTorch, for that. These are the AML libraries that use the detection and to detect the suspicious transaction while using the AIML technique. Pandas, NumPy, to do the data visualization, numerical analysis on these data. So all these things is there. Then the front end and UI, they are like things like React and Angular, the part of front end, and you are where the operation team or the compliance team will see that case, on the screen, or how the UI UX should look like. And then the Java and backend will happen the Spring Boot, Node.js, Python, Flash, and Django. So that will happen, the backend thing, and then the deployment. So all this code we need to deploy. So Docker and carbonates are there the roles in the deployment thing. So these are the the technology stack and the summary. So let's conclude these things slides. So a living system, the transaction monitoring is not an one time project. It's the continuously projects in new improvement and new add one will happen in the transaction monitoring system continuously. Financial intelligence unit of that country provide new rules or new logic, so we need to update continuously. Regulatory will changes, and accordingly we need to build the system. The different pattern of the fraudulent or the criminals will increase, so accordingly we will make the system. So it's not the one time project, it's require the continuously changes project. So then in the such kind of project, agile software development methodology is the best methodology. We will do incremental and increase the project. We will use a minimum viable product concept in the such kind of project, or it require the continuous monitoring and rule refinement and model retraining, and adopt the new trends, new technology, or new ideas, or new mm, rules. Adopt these things, and it is, and the scalable is key. The architecture must be able to handle over the increasing volumes of transactions and data that analyze these things. And scalability, the transaction volume always increase. More of the customer are doing the online transactions, they doing the RTGS, NEFT transactions, SWIFT transactions, the transaction that are interacting with the banks, the transactions which are involvement with the bank. That volume of these transactions are increasing daily. So the scalability will increase, and the system should that amount of scalable to perform such kind of transactions. The offline transaction, cash to cash transaction will decreases day by day, and the online transaction will increase day by day. So the scalability, the part is there. And then the collaboration, a successful transaction monitoring system is a partnership between the data engineers and data scientists and compliance officer and analysis. So collaboration will require all these the stakeholder, or all these the important key parts of the transaction monitoring system, like the data engineer, data scientist, compliance officer, analytics. So these are the conclusion. And thank you so much, guys, for attending this entire lecture. And that will definitely, I think, increase your knowledge and understanding in these fields. And if you like my video, please do like and subscribe, so that will motivate me to create more and more videos for you guys. Thanks once again. Thanks.